The story begins with the protagonist explaining that it all began on that fateful night. His gaze remains fixed on her as she descends under the moonlight. With a smile, she reveals that she has come to repay him. Elsewhere, a man is seen frantically running away from a bear, cursing himself for venturing too deep into the forest. The bear lunges at him, swinging its massive claws, but before the attack can land, the protagonist effortlessly intercepts it. Turning to the man, he asks if he is unharmed. The man, visibly shaken, stammers that the bear is still behind him, yet the protagonist swiftly subdues the creature with ease. Overwhelmed with astonishment, the man asks if he is some kind of legendary adventurer, to which he calmly responds that he is not. Kneeling beside the fallen beast, the protagonist examines it with a discerning eye. The man, confused, remarks that it is merely a scratch, only to realize that our hero was not speaking to him. Upon closer inspection, he concludes that the bear has suffered broken ribs. The man questions his actions, reminding him that this creature serves the Demon King's army. The protagonist acknowledges its status as a monster, yet insists that at this moment it is his patient. Without hesitation, he employs his skill, chop, to extract the fractured rib, apologizing to the bear for the rough procedure. He then assumes that its natural regenerative abilities will take care of the rest. As the bear rises to its feet, it fixes its gaze upon the man, who recoils in fear. The protagonist asks if she is feeling better, and the bear responds with a sound. The man, still trembling, demands to know what he is doing. The young lad narrows his eyes and inquires whether the man possesses the eggs. The man hesitates, attempting to conjure an excuse, but the MC explains that egg-laying bears are extremely rare. The bear had given chase because its egg got stolen. Realizing his folly, the man promptly returns the egg, and the bear retreats into the forest. Shaken, the guy asks if the lad is capable of communicating with monsters, but he dismisses the notion, clarifying that it is nothing like that. The man then asks how he knew about the egg. The protagonist elucidates that monsters also possess hearts, and if one listens carefully, their silent voices can be heard. Without warning, he firmly grasps the man's arm and declares that he is heading to the ranch, offering to take him down the peak. The man is left in stunned disbelief when he witnesses the protagonist utilizing healing magic. Struggling to comprehend the extent of his abilities, he finally musters the courage to ask about his identity. Our NPC reveals his name, Zeke Veterinari, the Beast Doctor. The scene shifts to him giving a shot to a cow. A farmer and his daughter show their appreciation, to which he coolly responds it's no biggie. The girl, curious, points out the glowing hands and asks her dad about it. He explains it's the doctor's mad skills. Intrigued, she wonders if she can learn too. Dad reassures her she's got what it takes to be just as awesome. But Zeke adds, saying skills are nothing compared to the real magic of wanting to heal. The farmer praises him, noting their family has trusted his services since his father's time. He humbly admits he's still far from surpassing his father. Curious, the young girl asks where his father is. He solemnly replies that he has passed away. Nervously, she apologizes, but he reassures her that it's all right. Turning his attention back to the cow, he informs the farmer that Moko is doing well, though there are still some concerns. The farmer, now attentive, asks him to elaborate. He points out that the ventilation in the barn is inadequate and some cows are having trouble getting along. Furthermore, he questions the excessive amount of concentrated feed in their diet. Observing that the cows appear sluggish, overweight, and struggling to breathe, he presses the farmer for an explanation. Embarrassed, the farmer admits that Zeke saw through it effortlessly, confessing that he increased the feed due to an order he received last month. Zeke replies that such behavior is typical of them, but before he can continue, his communication device suddenly rings. As he answers, a voice on the other end yells at him, demanding to know how much longer he will take. Zeke calmly informs the Prime Minister that he is conducting a routine checkup, only for the minister to scoff in irritation, complaining that he is merely inspecting livestock and that it should not take more than 30 minutes. Zeke asserts that the checkup requires both time and effort, but the minister, growing more agitated, questions why he even bothers with such creatures since they are destined to be slaughtered anyway. He orders Zeke to return immediately. Unfazed, Zeke simply responds that he will comply. Observing the exchange, the little girl appears worried for him, but he apologizes for boring her with such matters. The farmer, equally displeased with the higher-ups, voices his frustration, and Zeke solemnly remarks that in the current era, life is viewed as nothing more than cheap livestock. The farmer elaborates that ever since the new king ascended the throne, the livestock industry has fallen into ruin, leaving Zeke as the sole remaining beast doctor. Zeke, however, states that he continues this work simply because he loves it, admitting that he knows little about the outside world. The farmer advises him to consider his own well-being as well, to which he responds that hearing such words makes him happy. With his work finished, Zeke announces that he must return and bids them farewell. Mounting his beast companion, Chi signals their departure. However, Chi suddenly begins to act strangely. Concerned, Zeke questions the beast's behavior, asking if he overheard the earlier call. As they travel, he contemplates the idea of leaving, but deep down, he knows he cannot simply abandon those who rely on him. He mutters that despite everything, his country is not entirely hopeless. Suddenly, Chi accelerates without warning. Alarmed, Zeke attempts to rein him in, protesting that they are heading in the wrong direction. Shi-chan eventually halts, and Zeke glances up in confusion, only to spot a dog in a dire state. Without hesitation, he picks up the injured creature, addressing Chi and thanking him for bringing him here. Assessing the dog's condition, he notices severe wounds. Taking out an injection, he draws a sample of its blood and examines it, quickly detecting traces of poison. Analyzing the nature of the affliction, he deduces that the poison must have originated from an ogre's claw. Just as he reaches this conclusion, the dog stirs. With a reassuring smile, Zeke gently tells the pup not to worry, for he is here now. Producing medicine, he administers treatment before running his hand through the dog's fur. Noticing its clean and well-kept coat, he deduces that it is not a wild animal and wonders what it is doing out in the wilderness. Before he can ponder further, a group of augurs suddenly emerges. Zeke, narrowing his eyes, questions their motives, arguing that the dog is merely a child. However, the augurs ignore his words and launch an attack. Dodging their strikes with ease, Zeke sighs and remarks that they brought this upon themselves. With swift precision, he retaliates, effortlessly defeating the first augur. He warns the others to back off if they wish to avoid injury, yet they refuse to heed his words. Without hesitation, he employs paralysis and sleep magic to incapacitate them. Turning his attention back to the pup, he reassures it that the danger has passed. The creature, overjoyed, expresses its gratitude only to vanish in an instant. Zeke blinks in surprise, realizing that not only has it disappeared, but it also spoke to him. Glancing at Chi, he chuckles and comments that they should return now, since all is well. Upon his return to the castle, he is immediately summoned before the king. The ruler coldly dismisses Zeke, citing excessive expenses. Stunned, Zeke demands an explanation. The prime minister scoffs, calling livestock a disposable resource and accusing Zeke of making unnecessary excuses about health and environment. Removing him, they claim, will cut costs and boost economic growth. The king glances at Zeke and inquires about any objections. Zeke, with a sigh of exasperation, points out the necessity of experts for maintaining productivity and preventing the spread of disease. He emphasizes the challenges of handling the kingdom's monster unit, noting that without specialized care, chaos will reign supreme. However, the prime minister, with a smug grin, unveils a magical device that can handle both monsters and beasts with ease, rendering Zeke's expertise ancient. Zeke, realizing the repercussions of treating living beings like objects, tries to warn them of the fatal outcomes of such an approach. However, the minister merely laughs, dismissing his concerns as nonsense. With finality, the king declares that he has been expelled for his so-called crimes. He stands there, speechless, unable to process the unjust turn of events. With no other choice, he departs. Finding a quiet place, he sinks to the ground with a weary sigh. Staring into the distance, he mutters that ever since the new king took power, everything has gone wrong. Sensing his distress, Shi-chan nudges him in an attempt to lift his spirits. Smiling faintly, Zeke murmurs that animals are not objects, they have hearts as well. Shi, sensing his emotions, playfully bumps into him, causing him to stumble. At that moment, something unexpected occurs. From the sky, a radiant figure descends. Zeke freezes, captivated by the stunning woman before him. Her beauty is mesmerizing. As she lands gracefully, she looks directly at him and declares that she has come to see him. Without hesitation, she steps forward and wraps her arms around him in a warm embrace. Holding him close, she smiles and proclaims that she has come to repay her debt. The girl introduces herself as Tafania and tells him that he may call her T. Confused, Zeke gestures for her to sit wherever she likes, and she complies. He then introduces himself as Zeke, a beast doctor. As they converse, he inquires whether she is the puppy he saved, to which she affirms. Observing her ears and tail, he notes that she indeed resembles a beast folk. Unfazed, he states that he rescued a puppy, not a girl. Understanding his skepticism, she promptly transforms back into a puppy and asks if he believes her now. He acknowledges that he does. Curious, he questions whether she is a beast, remarking that he has never heard of a beast capable of assuming human form. Shocked, she asks if he is unfamiliar with divine beasts, and upon seeing his clueless expression, she explains, "Divine beasts are akin to gods, existing since ancient times. The one who rules over them is the divine beast king, and she is his daughter. She has come to recruit him." Zeke is bewildered. She further elaborates, revealing that their homeland, the beastland Neroguma, is in dire need of the same heroic hand he extended to a mere beast. Zeke refutes the notion, stating that he merely aids those in need. Moreover, given that he has just been expelled, the timing could not be more perfect. Resolute, he instructs her to take him to Neroguma. They exchange a fist bump, and immediately the body begins to glow. As T shifts back into her human form, he questions the phenomenon. She informs him that the contract has been sealed and urges him to unleash his hidden power to attain even greater strength. However, as she watches him, she appears just as perplexed but remains delighted nonetheless. He acknowledges this and asserts that they should not waste any time, deciding they will depart at dawn. She agrees and promptly goes to sleep. He notices that she has taken his bed and informs her of this. Unbothered, she acknowledges it and playfully suggests that they should sleep together. He appears confused but ultimately goes to sleep alongside Chi. After some time, Zeke returns to the man and his daughter. The man questions whether he is truly leaving and laments that he will miss him. Zeke responds that he can no longer remain there, cursing the so-called big shots. He assures the man that they will be fine without him and advises him to focus on himself. The man then notices T and comments that Zeke now has company, so there is no need for them to worry. When he returns, he finds T engaged in conversation with someone. He inquires about it, and she casually replies that she was merely handling some business. He also mentions hearing another voice, but he ultimately dismisses it. They resume their journey. As they travel, T informs him that their journey will take 5 days, emphasizing that it will be a long trip. She suggests that they should make it an enjoyable one, but suddenly, she begins acting strangely. Concerned, Zeke asks what is wrong, and soon, he notices something in the distance. It is a harpy. Recognizing it as an A-rank beast, he wonders why it is lingering on the road. T instructs Chi-chan to steer clear of it, but suddenly Zeke orders her to stop. Surprised, she demands to know why he did that. Ignoring her question for the moment, he dismounts and cautiously approaches the harpy, remarking that there had been numerous injured beasts lately. T warns him to be careful. The harpy, frightened, attempts to flee but is too weak to do so. Zeke swiftly casts his sleep spell to subdue her. Amazed by his skill, T questions why he would bother treating it. He reminds her that he is a doctor and, more importantly, that the beasts are growing increasingly ferocious due to the Demon King's curse. It is not the beast's fault. T embraces Zeke happily, showering him with praise and declaring that at this rate, even the harpy will fall in love with him. He reminds her that the beasts are cursed, making them difficult to tame. She questions whether he had not tended to beasts in the kingdom before, and he explains that lifting the curse took time, requiring it to be undone bit by bit. Suddenly, the harpy awakens, immediately wrapping her arms around him and confessing her love. Stunned, he remains speechless, while T is astonished that he has managed to lift the curse from such a high-ranking beast. He attempts to clarify that he does not possess such power, but T marvels at how their contract must have granted him abilities beyond her expectations. Confused, he begins to piece things together and realizes that the harpy is now speaking. She informs him that his power has evolved, enabling him to comprehend the language of beasts. Now, understanding the harpy's clinginess as a result of their contract, he finds himself at a loss for words. T reminds him that it is simply a reflection of his own kindness. She and the harpy are latched onto him like leeches, leaving him dumbfounded. She, clearly fed up with the whole situation, suddenly jumps in and straight up calls him an idiot. Z tries to defend himself, but Chi's words leave him speechless. He can't believe what he's hearing. Chi, not impressed, accuses him of lying, saying he's practically drooling over them and questioning if he has a thing for mammals. T tightens her hold on him, and he quickly begs her not to escalate things. Meanwhile, Chi speeds up in annoyance. Desperate to put a stop to the madness, Zeke blurts out that Chi is the bee's knees. She immediately stops, looks back at him, and her mood changes to one of joy. He never thought he'd be having a heart-to-heart with Chi like this. T suddenly points out that they'd already reached their destination. Zeke can't believe it's only been a few hours. She credits his new skills for their speedy travel. As they enter the city, the people of Neroguma welcome her with warmth and reverence. Though they had no doubts about her identity, this moment solidifies it. She truly is a princess. She addresses the public, announcing that she has brought a doctor with her. As Zeke introduces himself, an uneasy silence spreads among the crowd, and murmurs of gossip fill the air. Perplexed, he asks if his introduction was excessive, but T reassures him that it is simply because the people are unaccustomed to humans. It is only then that he recalls, long ago, humans persecuted the beast folk, forcing them to flee deep into the forest. The royal guard steps forward, instructing T to follow him. She apologizes for the people's reaction, but Zeke brushes it off, assuring her that it is fine. Just then, a little girl catches her attention and cheerfully invites her to try some apples. She extends the invitation to Zeke as well, who accepts without hesitation. She eagerly urges them to follow her to her shop, and without warning, both she and T break into a sprint. Zeke calls after them, telling them to wait, but before he can catch up, a carriage suddenly barrels toward them. In a split second, the carriage collides with both T and the girl. Without hesitation, Zeke and Chi-Chan rushes to their aid. Zeke leaps forward, catching T midair, and immediately asks if she is unharmed. She thanks him, and he quickly checks on the child, relieved to see that she is also safe. The royal guard arrives in a panic, demanding to know if T is injured. She reassures him that she is fine. The guard then orders the immediate arrest of the carriage driver. As the driver is apprehended, Zeke steps forward, asking them to wait. He inspects the horse's hooves and notices they are severely overgrown. Turning to the driver, he inquires whether he trims them regularly, explaining that walking on stone surfaces in such a condition is akin to stepping on shards of glass. Feeling guilty about his slip-up, the man starts apologizing like he's auditioning for a theater role. Zeke steps in to mention he's already patched up the horse, but he'll need more attention in the future. The nervous driver reluctantly agrees, then turns to the guard, begging for his buddy to be set free. He also vouches for some leniency, and after a bit of hesitation, the guard caves in. Zeke then turns to the young girl, casually advising her to avoid any more reckless stunts. She sheepishly lowers her head in apology. The gossiping townsfolk switch gears and start praising our boy this time. The girl and the driver both express their gratitude for his kindness. T, watching the scene unfold, is delighted that the people have accepted him so quickly. She expresses her desire for him to grow even closer to everyone, so that he may truly belong among them. She, still irritated, declares possessively that he belongs to her alone. T, amused, tells her to calm down. As they reach the palace, Zeke is awestruck by its grandeur. T notices his reaction and asks if something is wrong, urging him to step inside. She instructs the maid that Zeke is a VIP, and the maid informs him that they have prepared a guest room for his exclusive use. With that, she departs. The maid kindly tells him not to hesitate to ask for anything he may need. Settling into the room, he and Chi excitedly remark on how T is truly a princess through and through. Zeke, still overwhelmed, admits that he was caught off guard. He wonders whether he can meet the expectations of the nobles, given that his skills lie solely in medicine. Chi-Chan immediately refutes his self-doubt, insisting that it is not true. She praises him, calling him both kind and handsome, and assures him that as long as he is by T's side, she will be fine. Hearing her words, Zeke smiles and expresses his gratitude for her unwavering belief in him. As he pets her, Chi's tail wags in contentment. He pulls her into a hug, affirming that their bond transcends race and should continue to do so. Just then, their moment is interrupted by cries for help. Alerted, Zeke pinpoints the location and notices two men struggling with a heavy load. Without hesitation, he and Chi race toward them. Bursting through the door, they are met with a shocking sight of kidnappers. Zeke grills the men, inquiring if they're kidnappers. Startled, they demand to know how he busted them despite their ninja-like sneaky skills. Confused, he casually mentions that spotting them was a breeze. Q gasps of realization as they discover his superhuman detection abilities, a talent usually reserved for rangers, but Zeke humbly clarifies that it's more of a medical skill. After some hushed deliberation, they realize he's the VIP guest. Unfazed, he schools them on better ways to woo a lady, warning that abduction won't win any hearts. One thug, agitated by his sass, orders him to zip it before lunging. With cat-like reflexes, Zeke dodges and zaps the attacker with a paralysis spell, leaving him dumbfounded. The captor can't wrap his head around Zeke's magical prowess. Zeke corrects him, explaining that it is not exactly what he thinks, and demands that he release the girl, assuring that he will question them afterward. Frustrated, the kidnapper attempts to flee with the girl, but Chi intercepts him, striking him with enough force to throw him off balance. As a result, the girl slips from his grasp, but Zeke catches her effortlessly, landing gracefully before checking if she is injured. After ensuring her safety, he gently sets her down and approaches the kidnapper, preparing to interrogate him. However, before he can get a clear look at the man's face, the kidnapper activates a skill. Alarmed, Zeke immediately warns Chi to retreat, only to be shocked as the kidnapper vanishes into thin air. He watches in disbelief. Teleportation magic. A skill so advanced that only a select few can wield it. The realization dawns upon him, and he questions just the kidnapper's true identity. At that moment, he notices the girl struggling to speak. Quickly removing the gag from her mouth, he apologizes. She thanks him, addressing him by name. Startled, he asks how she knows who he is. With a smile, she responds that she is his superior. Confused, he asks what she means. Her expression remains warm as she reveals her identity. She is Sophia, the Beast Queen, and he is her savior. And now standing in the throne room, Sophia formally introduces herself, and Zeke responds in kind, apologizing for the incident that occurred the previous night. She chuckles, telling him not to be so formal. T also encourages him to relax, but Sophia gently scolds her to behave. With a composed demeanor, Sophia states that there is much to discuss, though for now, she will keep it brief. She proceeds to inform Zeke that she wishes for him to serve as the kingdom's chief court physician. T gives a knowing nod, confirming his hunch. Zoro-sama shoots him a look of disdain before turning his gaze to Sophia, demanding to know the reason for her summons. Unfazed, Sophia asks why he felt the need to crash the meeting so abruptly. Zoro, clearly displeased, expresses his disbelief at her decision. While he respects her authority, he can't wrap his head around the idea of an outsider holding such a prestigious position, even hinting at questioning her sanity. A guard quickly warns Zoro to think before he speaks, but the queen remains cool as a cucumber. She assures them all that she is of sound mind before revealing her true intention. She does not wish to replace him, but rather she wants him to work alongside Zeke as his second-in-command. Confused, Zoro narrows his eyes before smirking. Without hesitation, he scoffs at Zeke, leveling a baseless accusation against him, calling him a spy. Zeke is dumbfounded by this sudden insult, but as he observes Zoro's posture, something catches his attention. Noticing a stiffness in the man's movements, he calmly requests to see his right hand. Annoyed, Zoro demands to know why. He explains that the stiffness in his hand indicates an injury, and he had hoped to examine it. He scoffs, refusing outright, claiming that it is merely a minor cut that he can tend to himself. Undeterred, he calmly states that he left the exact same wound on the kidnapper last night. Silence falls over the room. He stiffens in shock, and the guards, equally taken aback, turn to Zeke for an explanation. One of them demands clarification, and Zeke asks if they were truly unaware of the incident. Sophia, maintaining her composure, confirms that she had deliberately withheld the information to avoid causing panic. She then reveals the truth. The previous night, a thief infiltrated her chambers, and Zeke was the one who saved her. The guards murmur amongst themselves, trying to process the implications. If his claim is true, then could he really be the culprit? And growing increasingly agitated, exclaims in outrage, demanding to know how Zeke dares to accuse him. He argues that even if the wound on his hand matches, there is no definitive proof that it is the same one. Unfazed, he states that he will conduct an appraisal of his blood and compare it with the sample he collected from the scene. The guards exchange astonished glances, and they are amazed by his capabilities. Invisibly nervous, attempts to refuse. However, Sophia's piercing gaze falls upon him, and she exerts her authority, pressuring him to comply. Realizing that he has been backed into a corner, Zoro clenches his teeth before suddenly drawing a knife. Without hesitation, he lunges at Sophia in a last-ditch effort to escape, but before he can reach her, he acts instantly, activating his skill. He cries out in pain as he collapses to the ground, completely immobilized. He stands over him, unfazed. He states that there is no need for restraint once a criminal is confirmed. Sophia, gazing at him with admiration, acknowledges that he has saved her once again. T, practically glowing with excitement, leaps into his arms, showering him with praise. Zeke firmly tells T to stop, prompting Sophia to glance at him in annoyance. Noticing her expression, he asks if she has something to say, but she merely replies that it is nothing. He sighs, and the scene transitions. Now standing in a vast medical facility, he is astonished by the sheer number of doctors and physicians present. A woman beside him explains that they are responsible not only for the well-being of the citizens, but also for the health of the livestock. He is amazed, as he had always worked alone in his previous role. She then informs him that he will be taking the lead in operations and urges him to introduce himself. Clearing his throat, he formally introduces himself, acknowledging that some among them may not approve of him. However, he assures them that he will do his best to integrate smoothly and encourages them not to hesitate if they have any questions. He concludes by expressing his eagerness to work with them. Despite his words, he feels dissatisfied, believing he should have prepared a better speech. However, to his surprise, the room erupts in applause, and everyone welcomes him warmly. Stunned, he listens as the woman explains that they have already heard of his remarkable feats. His heroism is well known throughout the town. She also mentions his predecessor, and he offhandedly remarks that the man looked like a villain. "Don't fret," she tells him, giving him a pep talk to unleash his inner greatness, promising their full support. He gives a nod of understanding, but before he can respond, a man bursts in with urgent news. They all rush outside to find a pack of creatures, including dragons. He's a bit confused at first, but it quickly dawns on him. The dragons inform him they came seeking him out after hearing he was let go, unable to live without him. Completely stunned, he wonders if his skills are attracting them. The woman next to him is intrigued and asks about the dragons. He reveals he used to care for them back home and asks if she'd be willing to take them in. He assures her that they are exceptional riding dragons. Her face lights up with excitement and she eagerly agrees. Meanwhile, in his homeland, the king laughs boisterously, admiring his newly crafted crown. The prime minister offers praise and he smugly remarks that spending money on Zeke had been a waste and now, at last, he is investing in something truly worthwhile. Glancing at his watch, he realizes it is getting late and it is time to depart. He turns to one of the guards and asks if the dragon is ready. However, the guard hesitates before reporting, much to his shock, that none remain. He explains that despite searching thoroughly, he could not locate a single one. His expression darkens as he mutters that without them, reaching the meeting on time will be impossible. Frustrated, he orders a horse to be prepared instead. However, as soon as the stable master attempts to comply, the animal viciously kicks him in the face. Growing in pain, he glares at the creature, only for the guard to hesitantly inform him that the horses, too, have become stubborn. Agitated, he listens as the horse itself angrily complains about the kingdom's poor conditions and outright refuses to work. The guard adds that given the current state of affairs, it is impossible to attach a carriage. The prime minister sighs and suggests taking the stagecoach, but the king adamantly refuses to use commoner transportation. He tells that he will arrange a private carriage. Seeing no other option, he reluctantly agrees. After some time, he finally arrives at the meeting hall, but in a disgraceful state and covered in dirt. The other rulers observe him with amusement. When he tries to offer an explanation stating that an unforeseen issue delayed him, the others merely smirk and inform him that the meeting is already wrapping up. They openly mock him, and laughter echoes throughout the room. He clenches his fists in barely restrained fury, cursing Zeke under his breath, blaming him entirely for this humiliation. Meanwhile, Zeke and Chi stand in awe before their newly assigned residence. He takes in its grand structure and spacious interior, commenting that there is more than enough room for Chi to stay indoors as well. Overjoyed, she beams with excitement. Casually, he informs her that he has already contacted Mint. Her eyes widen in disbelief as she asks if he truly reached out to her. He nods, explaining that he sent a letter via Messenger Owl. He then adds that regardless of how much she dislikes him, Mint is still his sister after all. Deciding that they should clean the place first, the letter reaches its destination, and she, upon reading it, declares that he should wait and she will be there in a flash.
Here I am, know it's been a while.